Hi, I am going to be working on my textile art piece, the wall hanging that has no name. If something comes to you that you think would be an appropriate name for it, please let me know. And I'm going to do some couching today. Actually, I already did some couching. I already videotaped some couching, and the whole thing was out of frame, which sort of defeats the purpose of watching a video, right? So here we are, and I'm going to do the second half of it. So what is couching? Couching is when you lay down a piece of fiber or fabric. You can do it with fabric. You can like twist a piece of fabric and lay it down and stitch it down. You can do it with, let's see, what else do I have over here? You could do it with a piece of lace. You could do it with a piece of cheesecloth. You can do it with just a big pile of fibers. I chose to do it with a piece of silk yarn. Now, originally, you might remember, let's see, that I had some sparkly stuff. And this is a really pretty fiber, and the colors were all there. But the rest of the piece did not feel like it was sparkly. Even if I add in some beads, it doesn't feel like a super sparkly thing to me. So I went looking for something else, and in my stash, I had this beautiful silk yarn. And this is spun from leftover sari silk waste, you know, like when you're tying your ribbons and you have all those little threads that come off. They save that, and people that are talented at spinning spin that into yarn for us. So that's what I decided to use here. And what I started with, okay, trying to figure out where to put couching, and this is a long piece, so it's kind of hard to see the whole thing here. I wanted something that was going to connect my three pieces. So I've got my top piece, my middle piece, and my bottom piece, and I just wanted the couching to connect it. I knew I wanted to kind of also help, not necessarily hide my raw edges from my doily, but just sort of soften them a little bit, and I can do more, of course, with more stitching. I pin it down, and I have a hard time working around pins, but you know, you just got to deal with it. Maybe sometimes you can just like freeform it, but on this one, because I really wanted to make sure I connected things, and I really wanted to make sure I connected the white section here to the white piece of lace. And I wanted this little knot down here to land around with those knots. I cut my length long because I'm not quite sure how I'm going to finish it yet, so I figured that will give me a chance to think about how I want to finish that. And I did know that I wanted the top to be up here somewhere. It's a little bit long, but not much, so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do there. I'm thinking on my top piece for hanging, I'm going to fold this down and stitch it, and I'll either put a heavy cord or a stick through there to hang it from. Now, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with my frayed edges. I did not think about this when I started on this piece. This is an old piece of linen. It's an old tablecloth that I cut into 4 pieces and dyed. And the stitches are going to keep coming undone. And normally I don't care, but if it's something I'm going to sell, you know, I need to think about, you know, the customer being happy long term. Now, some people have told me they take a little bit of glue and tack it down along the back side. And I might try that, except that, you know, I really don't want things to have blotches on the other side. I'm also wondering if, once I'm done stitching, if I can do some iron-on interfacing on the back. That might be something that I can do. So if you've done something like that over bumpy stitching, let me know. Let's see, what else? If you saw my last video, that's when I laid all this out. So I did work on this section, and I started off just building a little cluster, and then I had this piece of fabric that I had ripped off of the edge. It kind of matched, and I just kept adding to it. I haven't stitched it down yet because I'm thinking I might take some of these beads and add them in and out, and it's a lot easier to do that on a small piece, and then I can tack the whole thing down, but I'm still thinking about that, so I'm not sure, and I'm not going to feel pressured about it. And I know there's some things that are going to happen up here, but I'm not quite sure yet, so I'm not worried about that. I have it tacked down. That's enough for now. Off camera, and I say off camera because I stitched for 20 minutes and forgot to make sure that I was in frame, I just started tacking this down. And one of the things I was saying while I was tacking it down is a personal thing for me. I always have two things I have trouble with. One, I have trouble deciding what I want to couch with. And so I played with the greens, I played with the beige, I ultimately went with the brown just so that I could tie a little bit more of the dark colors throughout the entire piece. But this is the other thing that happens with me. When I work with anything that's variegated, I always have an immediate hesitancy when I go from the brown goes on top of the brown, and then the brown pops on top of the green, and then it pops even more on top of the beige. And that's just the thing with me. I'm not always matchy-matchy, but I just know that internally I go, uh-oh, did I screw it up? No, I didn't screw it up. It's just, number one, I have to get used to the color change. Number two, it's not done yet. There's so much more that can be done to this. And I am thinking already what I'm probably going to do. See if I can have some different examples to show you. Imagine where I've got the beige, I might do some green, some more browns. So I might do some more brown and green along there. And where I have the brown, I might do some green and beige things. And where I have the green, I might do some brown and beige things. I might do knots, I might do threads, I might do a combination, I might do some lace, who knows. But there's more things, there's lots more stitching that will happen here, so you're not going to just see this popped up. At least that's the plan. And that's as far as my planning goes. I don't plan anything else other than that. Now, if you're just getting started doing textile art, a piece like this shouldn't freak you out. All right, I took a piece of an old tablecloth. That's what I started with, a piece of an old tablecloth. The marks that are on here are from this doily being underneath the cloth, and I took some archival ink pads and I just scraped it along to get some of that. And then I sprayed it with some walnut inks and whatever other sprays that I had around. And that's it. Oh, and then there's some, the big blotches like this are from my archival re-inker droppers, and it just kind of drops some blotches on there. That's all that is. Same thing, I use the same technique to color the doily. Don't think that this is something you can't do. All my little pieces down here, I did the same thing to color. I've got two different kinds of cheesecloth in here. They've both been colored the exact same way. The only stitches I have done so far have been a seed stitch, very simple little seed stitch. I've got some French knots, and I've got, in a few places, I've got some bullion knots, very simple knots. I'm not doing fancy stitches, and you know why I'm not doing fancy stitches? Because I don't know the fancy stitches. I don't remember the fancy stitches. I can do them if I go look them up, but I haven't done a sampler. I'm going to do some kind of a sampler just for me. I'm going to do a simple Susan sampler. And a simple Susan sampler is going to be a piece of felt where I just do the stitches that as I need to remember them. And I'll do them across one piece of felt, and then I'm going to say, that's it, I'm done. I've learned what I need to do, and I'll go over to my piece and go back to work. I am an expert at complicating things, and I'm really trying to not do that, because when you complicate things, it takes a lot of the fun out of it. And you know, art is supposed to be fun, creating. Whether your art form is textile art, or making a journal, or making a collage, or painting a painting, or baking a cake, or writing a song, whatever your creative art form is, it ought to be fun to do. And if it's not fun to do, then why are you spending all that time doing it? Because life is too short to spend it doing things that aren't a lot of fun, right? At least that's my take on it. That's why I believe in a just because art practice. You do art just because it makes you happy. You do the kind of art you want to do just because it makes you happy. You don't do it because you have some set of rules. You don't do it because somebody's standing over you saying, okay, this is your job. You need to do this kind of art. At least I hope that's not what you're doing, because I really think that gets in the way of being creative. All right, now it's going to be tricky for me, because whenever I start doing this, taking a pin out, I forget things. And I know if you watch any of my stuff, you feel like, okay, Susan, you say this all the time. I say it all the time because a lot of us need to hear it all the time. We need to hear that you don't need to follow the rules. Now, there are so many ways to get inspiration nowadays. The internet has brought so many fabulous artists in front of our eyes. and we can watch them and we get, oh gosh, we get inspired by all the fabulous things they're creating. Maybe there are new techniques that we haven't done yet. We want to give them a try. Yeah, I don't know why that came up there, but I guess we're just going to work with it, right? We're going to work with it. And so you see these things and you're like, oh man, that's what I want to do. I want to go do that. I want to go buy all those supplies. And that's awesome. Or maybe you already have a lot of the supplies that person used. Oh, I see what happened. My thing came out. We're going to have to go back a little bit. Let's see. We're going to, a little bit of an undo. And it's wonderful to get that inspiration. If you have a favorite YouTuber that you like to watch to get inspired, let them inspire you. I am all for that. But at the same time, be inspired. Do not be constrained. Do not let what somebody else is doing with the same materials that you want to play with, don't let that make you feel like that's the only way it can go. Because there are 100 ways to make the same piece of art, or I should say not the same piece of art, to make different pieces of art with the same materials. There are 1,000 ways. There are 100,000 ways. Who knows? There are too many different ways because everybody is different. You're all going to bring your different skill sets to the table. And there's just no reason to feel that you have to do it exactly like somebody else does it. If you start off making an embroidery stitch and you can't remember how you saw it in the book, or you can't remember how you saw it on YouTube, and you come up with your own stitch, that's awesome. Come up with your own way to do it. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm looking at this right here and it's bugging me that it's that fat, and so I'm going to take my scissors right now. Well, it's bugging me. I'm just going to cut that little bit off, and I'm okay with it. All right, that bugs me a lot less. See, just because that made me happy to do that. So that's kind of all I wanted to say while I was working on this today is, you know, this is a simple project. It may not look simple, but it really is. It's a bunch of scraps of fabric and lace and threads and a few of my favorite fibers and a simple piece of fabric that I dyed with things that I already had on my shelf. I could have used paint. I did some beautiful fabrics the other day just using various blue paints that I needed. You know, they were almost empty. Just paint and water. That's all I did. And I got some beautiful fabrics. I still need to make that video. You know, use what you have. Do it your way. And make the art you want to make just because it makes you happy to make it. And don't stress about anything else. Do art your way just because. I will be back next time to show you what else is happening on here. And don't forget, if you have a name for this piece, let me know down in the comments and let me know if you do your art just because. Bye-bye for now.